From the crossroads of the Missouri Ozarks, it's P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. Welcome to our backroom bunker. Is it actually recording?
It is recording.
Oh, that's really good to know. You know, I find that when you're trying to record a podcast, that seeing that it's actually recording the podcast is really beneficial.
Yes. You know, to quote my 2-year-old self, fascinated with the reel-to-reel tape recorder that my dad had, tape recorder lights moving.
Oh, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's it. Yes, Dad put a microphone in front of my face at the age of, 2, as he was recording a tape to send to his brother-in-law, Bob, and I've never been the same.
In these podcast notes, you should put in that picture of you on the phone with the pencil in your hand.
Yes.
Like you're taking notes in your very first interview.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That'll be in the notes. That's a picture of me at about the age of 2.
Yeah.
That was taken at Grandma and Grandpa's place up in the middle of North Dakota.
You're so cute. Who are you talking to on the phone?
I have no idea.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I think if you look closely at the paper, I was really interested in the tire sale going on at the local car repair shop in Harvey, North Dakota.
Well, who wouldn't be? I mean, come on. Who doesn't love a tire sale? Or a fire sale, for that matter. We are, as you, if you just recently discovered P.I.D. Radio, first of all, download the app because all of our archives are there. Derek is every week adding more and more and more info for your ears. We've
got everything that we've got in our archives from 2005 through 2009. Some of the early programs when we were still calling it MythArc Radio.
In fact, we're going to have a special.
Yes. We're going to release 2 episodes today, and the second one will be devoted to our good friend, Dr. Michael Heiser, who was called home by the Lord on Monday of this week. So we will feature our very first interview with Mike, which was recorded back in '05.
Oh my gosh.
Early.
Was our first few months.
Right. Because I think we only did about 10 or 12 episodes under the title MythArc Radio before we changed it to P.I.D. Radio.
Yeah.
And I'd forgotten, but I've got the archive audio back out and listened to it this morning. And we were still calling it MythArc Radio at the time that we talked to Mike. So this is our very first conversation with Mike and our very first discussion with the leading scholar of the Divine Council worldview. So you'll hear that when you hear our second program today. We'll talk more about that in that tribute to Mike. But
what a wonderful man!
Yeah, he will be missed. But knowing where he is now makes it easier to deal with his passing.
Do you think that Sam T. Dachshund is up there asking Mike about those pugs?
I think so. Mike, what were you thinking?
Okay, look. When the day comes, they can come up here, but I'm sorry, they can't live anywhere near me.
There is a hierarchy up here, as you know, from your research, and dachshunds are clearly above pugs in the hierarchy.
Oh, yeah. They're the apex predator.
That's right. At least that's what dachshunds think.
That's what they think. Well, yes, we miss Mike terribly, but we also rejoice with his graduation to glory. Mm-hmm. What a wonderful thing.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of graduating, first of all, download the app. I want to remind you on that.
Yes.
It is, everything is there, plus everything we do on video is there, plus articles that you can read and a Bible. Yeah, I'm going to bring up the app right here so I know how to look at, so I'm actually looking at it while we're talking about it. And we're going to be adding more features to that More tab. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you bring it up, and I'm looking at it on my iPad now, so it's got the horizontal layout instead of the vertical layout on your phone. But the number of tabs is the same. Media, which is where you get all of our audio and video content. Blog, which is where we are posting, news updates and so forth. But excerpts from books. The main thing is excerpts from books. Every Wednesday morning, I'm putting out an article between 1,500, 2,000 words excerpted from our books. And we'll just do this as long as we've got material. And if we have to start writing original material someday, well, then so be it. We'll just keep putting it out there. But more original material. Writing through a series right now on the Titans, the sons of the Titans and the sons of Sheth, mentioned in Numbers 24. And the last 2 articles have been about Nimrod and the Tower of Babel. Stirred up a little controversy with the lead, the LEDE, on the
February 15th article, Nimrod gets a bad rap. He's not a good guy. You know, that if you read the article, it's clear, but there are some people who just saw that and was like, what are you around on? It's like, no. The point is Nimrod lived more than 1,000 years before Babylon was even founded. So he's not connected to Babylon. But you really got to be pretty evil for God to personally come down and say, okay, what you're doing now has to stop.
Absolutely. And yeah.
So that's there. We got the audio Bible. There's a schedule of our upcoming Bible studies. And under the More tab, you'll find a number of things. So all of that is available at the app. And the app is absolutely free. iOS, Android, Amazon, Kindle Fire, phones, tablets, works on all of those.
Yep. And by the way, a little bit of a left turn, but it has to do with interaction amongst many of you. And that is, I've had a weight loss group at Facebook for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And I have now changed it to Health Warrior group, I think, or something like that. But Derek and I have discussed the possibility, since there are already 1,800 plus members at this private group. Mm-hmm. And by private, we mean that it's something that you have to request to be a member of. But Derek and I, we've been talking about opening it up and making it more of a general discussion, not just about your weight loss journey, but about your spirit journey, your spiritual journey, your biblical knowledge, your Bible study requests, your prayer requests. Just many of you, frankly, are lonely and you're looking for someone to talk to who can relate to your situation. And that's what the body of Christ is called to do. So I've been talking with Derek about the possibility of changing that group to a Gilbert House Fellowship group.
Right. So not focused, although this can still be one of the, among the topics discussed.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can set up a separate chat for health questions. Mm-hmm. Right now, I've got a chat up there about health questions, but also another one that is looking for just accountability partners. And that's not only in a weight loss journey. Accountability is a spiritual concept. It's a biblical concept. And it's the kind of thing where if you have a particular area in your life that you're trying to sort of leave behind, like you have an addiction to this or that, or if you are struggling to get over or here's a good example. Say you're dealing with night terrors.
Yeah.
You want someone who can either help you to get over that, as in a deliverance person, and we've got many of you out there, or someone else who's going through it, not to reinforce one another, but to help support one another. So that if you think that Gilbert House Fellowship would be a good idea for a big group, again, already 1,800 of you there. Many of you listen to P.I.D. Radio and Gilbert House Fellowship and watch our programs. So let us know how you feel about that. Mm-hmm.
Something else I've been thinking about, I'm springing this on you here.
I love having things sprung on me.
I was thinking about this morning, and I don't know if the idea came to me, if it was implanted in me, if it was whatever. Just the idea of taking single questions and doing short videos on single questions.
I think that's a really good idea. And again, Mike Heiser is sort of teaching us how to do that because he's been doing a series of apologetics in 10 or 15 minute formats. Mm-hmm. Or he did, and he's left us that legacy.
He's left us that legacy.
He's left a huge legacy.
And that's one of the things that we have been thinking about because we looked at Mike, and Mike was just not about writing books and getting books out there and then selling his books.
Right.
It was getting the information out there, and he did that through various tracks. This tomorrow night's Iron and Myth program, which is a special because normally we do those once a month, but this past week we recorded a tribute to Mike, and we recorded it actually less than 24 hours before he passed. Mm. So as we were recording it, we were still speaking of Mike in the present tense, but we wanted to have that ready. So I'm going to put that up tomorrow night. But one of the things that came out during the conversation, we realized that Mike used all of these different tracks to get information out there.
Right.
He didn't just write these scholarly books. He didn't just address these academic institutions like the Evangelical Theological Society and so forth. He was addressing UFO conferences. Mm-hmm. He wrote fiction, science fiction, to present a biblical view of the UFO and the abduction phenomena. he put out these short videos with little clips that were being released on Instagram and Facebook and so forth. And that legacy will continue. Those ripples will continue to spread across the pond, as it were, as people discover them and share them with their friends. Hey, have you heard about this? Because there are always new people who are suddenly being exposed to divine counsel concept, or the Deuteronomy 32 worldview, the idea that God delegated responsibility for earth to lesser Elohim after Babel. Okay, you want the gods among you? Fine, but you're not going to like it.
Right. It's sort of like when he said, oh, you want a king? Fine, but you're not going to like it.
Here's Saul, but I've got David waiting in the wings, just like with people. He called Abraham and then Isaac and then Jacob. So that's Mike's legacy, because that information is now out there on the web, and his ministry, his nonprofit Miklot, will continue to put that information out there. So we're looking at that and thinking, okay, we're not getting any younger. What do we do so that the information that we have learned from Mike and the research that we've done that's built on Mike's foundation continue to spread out there? So anyway, that was just a thought. Little things like, was the snake in the garden really a talking snake?
Right. No, I think it's a brilliant idea. I really do. So we'll have to start moving towards that, which leads us into an expansion of our ministry that we've talked about on previous programs called Build Barn Better. And we will tell you all about that after the break later. But for now, getting into discussion of news items. The obvious one, of course, is that we've just had the 1-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine.
I'm a little surprised that Russia did not launch a bigger offensive. Now, they have ramped up the battle for the city of Bakhmut, which they've been trying to recapture after they lost it to Ukraine. But that may still be coming. I don't think that the rumored offensive, with some reports indicating as many as 500,000 Russian soldiers on Ukraine's border, I don't think they're there just for show.
No, they're not. And I here's my theory on why he did not do that on the anniversary. A, it was expected.
It's obvious, yeah.
But B, it was at the same time that he was discussing supposed peace plans with Xi from China. Much as we want to think of Vladimir Putin as an apex predator, if you want to put it that way, an apex autocrat, he really does have to dance a little bit to Xi's tune.
He does. He really needs China in his corner.
Yes, he does, as well as India.
And so far, I mean, one of the things that was expected to happen with all of the sanctions against Russia was a contraction of Russia's economy. Experts were saying it's going to contract between 8 and 9% in 2022. And I think the official number came in at 2.2% contraction. So much better than expected. Where Western Europe is really struggling, German industry, and especially that was really hooked on cheap Russian natural gas for energy, they're really struggling. And there are Germans now who are saying, and this has come out openly, in fact, over the past couple of months, some EU officials who are grumbling now that the only one who's coming out of this whole thing well is the United States, because now suddenly we're selling record amounts of liquefied natural gas on tankers over to Europe to try to make up the shortfall. But the Europeans are also buying Russian gas from Bulgaria, which oddly enough is transiting Ukraine still, and Russian oil that India is buying at a discount and selling at a profit.
Yes.
So India and China are kind of making up for what Russia lost in business from Europe. But some of the analyses I read, and I don't say that I endorse these views 100%, I'm just throwing this out there for consideration, that the Chinese are unlike the Russians. The Chinese are absolutely against the idea of a nuclear conflict. Must be avoided at all costs. Russia, on the other hand, has made it very clear through its officially published military policies that if Russia feels that it is threatened, in other words, if they feel it's an existential threat, it's in a conflict that threatens the survival of the Russian state, they will use tactical nuclear weapons.
Here's another opinion of mine. I have a lot of them. Russia has been boasting about a torpedo that is radioactive.
The Poseidon.
Yes, and would cause, which is interesting, they named it that, but that would cause a radioactive tsunami what, 100 feet high?
1,600 feet high.
A ridiculous
500 meters.
Tall tsunami that would take out an entire city and or part of England and make it radioactive. He may be thinking, and his advisors may be telling him, that if you poison water, you haven't poisoned the air. Therefore, it will not affect Russia. Whereas if you send out even a tactical nuke because of prevailing winds, there's always a possibility that you blow some radioactive material into parts of Russia. So it's possible he's thinking he's safe on that ground. But even if he were to think, I can use a tactical nuke strike somewhere, say in an area that's not going to blow anything here, he's really got to double think that. He's got to look at all possibilities.
Right. And
I think he is looking at all possibilities. I really do.
Yeah.
I don't think Putin is stupid.
He's not stupid, or he wouldn't have ruled Russia even while he was no longer president during that 8-year interregnum with Dmitry Medvedev.
Yes, he just changed the constitution so he could be the main one in charge.
And he, despite what we keep hearing in the corporate media here in the West, he does not appear to be terminally ill. He is not unpopular among Russians. His popularity still, he is way more popular among Russians than any American president has ever been.
Yes, there are some dissenters. But for the most part, I think Russians are still almost worshiping him.
The cult of Putin.
The cult of Putin,
right.
Yes. So yes, I think that this 1-year anniversary did not lead, and I'm so thankful, to anything major happening. There were moments of prayer. There was a lot of discussion. Look back at the last year, visits to graveyards, interviews with grieving families, things like that. And over in Russia, there was celebration. But they too were grieving the loss of their soldiers.
Right.
So families, the average family on the street, both sides, they're hurting.
Yes. And there are some reports that there are cracks in alliances on both sides. In the West, again, you've got the Europeans complaining that the Americans are coming off pretty well here, and that the neocons and neo-libs in the United States, because now for some reason Democrats have become the war party. It's obvious. But Europeans are so they're a little miffed that we're doing okay, and they're the ones paying just insanely higher prices for energy. But inside Ukraine, Prigozhin, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who's the head of Wagner Group, the mercenaries that Putin has been leaning on to carry the war in Ukraine, has complained that Russians on the general staff, Russian generals on the staff, the military command, are starving his troops of needed supplies, ammunition, and food. And he actually went so far as to accuse them of treason. Now, Prigozhin is called Putin's chef because he's kind of started out as a contractor, a supplier who Putin trusted to, provide his food, because when you're a guy in that kind of situation, it's like, well,
it was one of his many businesses. He wasn't personally a chef, but the fact is that French word also means chief. He is Putin's chief of many things.
Right. And a trusted resource that Putin leans on to get things done that he needs done. So there may be some internal power squabbles going on, which you would expect, just as there are here in the United States. People keep falling out windows, yes. And perhaps onto bullets or baseball bats. We're not sure. Oh, severe head trauma after falling out a first floor window.
Exactly. We're told they're suicides, but I really don't think all of them are.
Yeah. Well, fact, that happens here too. There was that.
I know. Don't want to get into that discussion. What I want to discuss primarily today is, and it's one reason because you and I do a lot of research into the cult of the dead.
Yeah.
A story came out this week that a 52-foot long, let me get it up here, bring the story, 52-foot long scroll, papyrus scroll, with the Book of the Dead on it, was discovered in an Egyptian tomb. Now, mind you, the Egyptians did not call this the Book of the Dead. They called this the Book of Emerging Forth into the Light.
This is well known, but this would be the longest complete.
Yes, This has 113 chapters distributed over 150 columns. It includes all sorts of imagery, including images of Osiris, who is essentially the king of the dead. And he is worshipped as representing resurrection. And you and I have talked about this many, many times, that resurrection is the ultimate goal of the fallen realm.
Right. Osiris was referred to by a word in Egyptian that sounds a lot like the Hebrew word netzer, which means branch. And I've argued based on a paper by a scholar whose name I'm going to forget now. He's a professor at Fuller Theological Seminary. That loan word was applied by Isaiah in Isaiah chapter 14. The loathed branch of Isaiah 14 is the loathed God. And specifically God of the dead.
Yes.
I'd posted this in fact, we talked about this.
Doesn't it mean dead God?
Well, it's applied to Osiris. And the term used in that paper is actually divinized corpse.
Yes.
Now, I paraphrased that and called it a dead god. And there was a scholar who posted a note to one of our YouTube videos, said it doesn't mean dead God. It just means God. It's like, yeah, but it's applied to Osiris, who was the Lord of the dead, and in the context of Isaiah 14, which deals with Sheol, the Rephaim.
I so agree with you. Yeah. I really do. So, and he is green.
Yeah, because he's rotting. He is a corpse, a divinized corpse, hence netzer, and Isaiah applying that Hebrew or that Egyptian loan word into a Hebrew document. Now, most scholars translating Isaiah 14 assume that the whole text is in Hebrew, so this must be the Hebrew word netzer instead of the Egyptian word that sounds like netzer. And but again, in context, it makes a lot of sense.
What's interesting, though, is that in Celtic mythology, which goes back to other Middle Eastern and Mediterranean mythologies, and even Eastern, is the idea of the green man, Carnunos. And he's called green not just because he's a god for the underworld, but he's a green man because he brings resurrection. He brings spring with him.
Kind of a nature deity.
Yes, very much so. But more than that, he gets into some bacchanalia behavior.
Yeah. So the owner of this papyrus was named Ahmose, Ahmose. Looks like Ahmose, but
the one he was buried with.
Yeah, we've learned it's Ahmose. Dr. Doug Petrovich schooling us on that. Tutmose, Ahmose, Kamose. They say not much is known about him, so I assume he's not the Ahmose who helped begin the war of the native Egyptian pharaohs based at Thebes against the Hyksos, who were the Canaanites who occupied and ruled the Nile Delta during the, say, about 1700 to about 1500 BC.
Right. Probably not. But again, the picture that the website Daily Mail has the story, I don't know that this massive scroll that they're showing in the picture is actually the one they discovered because it looks too good. It's possible that it's a copy, but the text and the imagery are being deciphered and examined. And the Book of the Dead, it's essentially, is my understanding, is this is how you get past the various gatekeepers.
Interestingly enough, in the Book of the Dead, based on a translation that I read before this discovery, were called watchers.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Egyptian, they were called watchers.
Yeah.
They guarded the gates to the underworld.
The judges of the underworld. This is the Anunnaki or the Anuna in Mesopotamian lore, and there were 7 of them. The Apkallu.
Yeah.
Yeah, 7 gates.
The watchers.
There were 7 gates that Inanna had to pass through to get to her sister's throne. So think of these almost as portals.
It's like the 7 gates that, like the 7 gates that Gilgamesh had to pass through as he was looking for, he was trying to find Utnapishtim, which is the Mesopotamian Noah character.
Trying to get some sweet ideas on immortality.
Right. I'm trying to find the date this the scroll was among a trove of treasures unearthed by archaeologists at the same site as the latest Book of the Dead. The temple of Queen Nate, who was the wife of King Teti, first king of the 6th dynasty, ruled Egypt between 2323 BC and 2150 BC.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's pretty old because it was found close to the Pyramid of Djoser.
Okay. At Saqqara?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's where Djoser's pyramid is.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'll have to look this up because, again, it's really interesting. I do think that the pictures that we've seen are the ones that are on display.
We probably saw much of this. Did we get into? We did. We went into the Egyptian section at the British Museum when we were there, didn't we?
We did. Saw a little bit of that, yeah.
I think the Mesopotamian section was closed that day.
The Syrian section.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah,
we ended up going to the Egyptian one.
Yeah, so we couldn't get in to see the artifacts from Syria, Lebanon, and Israel, which was really disappointing. We want to get back over and just spend like a week inside the British Museum. But,
so cool.
Yeah, uncovered inside a tomb near the step pyramid of Djoser, which is the earliest colossal stone building. So yeah, probably into the 3rd millennium BC, well before Ahmose, the pharaoh, or king rather, because the term pharaoh wasn't even used until after Moses. So when we see the term pharaoh used during the time of Moses, that's kind of an anachronism.
Yeah, that's very true.
But this probably predates Moses by about 1,000 years.
Probably. Well, a related story I just sent to you. A 3rd century BC burial of a woman was uncovered, and it shows a young woman who probably died in Sardinia about 2,000 years ago, who was buried upside down with a nail driven through her skull.
Oh!
To keep her down. Now, it's thought that this type of burial might be to keep her from spreading epilepsy to others in the area.
Now, we know, of course, epilepsy can't be transmitted. It's not a transmissible disease.
But that makes no sense. Spiking her down to keep her from infecting others. If the belief at the time was that it's a miasma or it's in the air, that you spread it just by being around someone in their town or in their house. And some diseases are spread that way. Not epilepsy. If that was the belief, then once she's in the ground, you've fixed it. You bury her upside down and spike her to the ground. Seems to me like that is to keep her from rising again.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Now, she's dead, but we're afraid her epilepsy is going to spread, so we're going to spike her skull into the earth so she can't. That doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. But, there's a long history throughout civilizations of revenants, those who come back. Think of them as zombies, but they don't always act like our movie zombies. Sometimes they're just like themselves, but they show up and they're hungry. Because the dead, as in zombies, the dead must be fed.
Right. That was a belief throughout the ancient world, which was the reason for that monthly ritual where the ancestors had to be summoned by name, say their names. That's where that originates.
Yeah, don't detonate them, no.
Don't detonate them. Well, you can't help it. They're dead.
I know. How do you not dead name a dead person?
In the ancient world.
Who knew that was even going to be a conversational point?
No.
It's
not on my bingo card for life, much less for this year.
On mine either. But yes, I think this is a fascinating fact. I saved this story to investigate it further because, for one thing, it's on Sardinia, which may make it an Amorite practice.
Well, could be, yes, because she was definitely Phoenician or Punic, and the Phoenicians, the Punic people, were just the Amorites by a different name. So that's entirely possible.
So, related story, which I will now send you. I can get it to come up.
That wasn't as cute as the story of the Scottish squirrel.
No,
It looks like he's coming over the top of the tree branch at you.
You know, you have to put a picture of that squirrel in the notes because That is the cutest little squirrel.
The Scottish attack squirrel.
It's the Billy Connolly squirrel.
Yes. Oh gosh, what movie was that? The one with the
something season
over the hedge?
No. It was the one about Hunt. No, maybe it was Over the Hedge. Yeah, whatever it was
where
hilarious.
William Shatner played the opossum.
Yes,
Rose Bud.
Oh my gosh, so funny. This story is related because it has to do with a dead ancestor, a mummy, mind you, a mummified dead ancestor of Boris Johnson.
What?
Yes, I just sent it to you. Boris Johnson's, let's see how many greats it is.
Great grandmother who died in the 18th century.
Yeah, long dead grandmother who was thought to have died because she had a great deal of mercury in her system and in her brain. It was thought that she had probably died of syphilis because mercury, right up until the end of even into the early 20th century, was being used as a treatment for syphilis. It actually made you worse. It didn't stop the syphilis, but it caused all sorts of neurological problems. However, in examination of her body, it was discovered that she had high levels of a previously unknown bacterium.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
So we're resurrecting bacteria now.
Well, every time you take a mummy, you have the potential to do that. You open a grave and there's the potential for something in there.
High levels of a bacterium previously unknown to science.
Mm-hmm.
What the?
I know. And what does it mean? Well, let's just say I hope that all of those who have participated in handling and examining this long dead woman, she died at about age 69, so she had lived a nice long life. I just pray that they were taking precautions.
Yeah, you'd hope so.
Not only with themselves, but with exposure to the room itself. Making sure that room was walled off from any atmospheric communication with the outside.
You wouldn't think, though, that archaeologists or paleontologists doing this kind of work would normally work in a
BSL-4 lab.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of thing reserved for Ebola. Marburg. Yeah.
Marburg, by the way, is still infecting a few. It's relatively slow and a relatively small outbreak in Uganda, I think. Was it Uganda? No, Uganda had Ebola. It's another state, but it's one in
West Africa.
Towards West Africa. But if we're going to talk disease, Cambodia has been reporting a cluster of H5N1 cases. And a young girl, 11 years old, in a family cluster, died of the disease in the last week or so. And now her father has been diagnosed with it. This is an avian flu that does not pass easily to humans yet. And underline that word yet, because up until the last few years, it has been primarily in avian birds populations, primarily migratory birds. But over the last few years, we've seen episodes where flocks, domestic flocks, like large turkey farms and chicken laying operations, egg operations, that the migratory birds come through, a local bird catches it, goes to the flock, and suddenly we've had tens of thousands called. We've probably had millions of birds called over the last couple of years.
I looked that up this week. No, just this year. It's like 53 million just this year.
That's a lot
I think they've only confirmed about 6,000 cases, if I remember the number correctly.
Right.
But because it spread so quickly and it's about 90% fatal in chickens within 48 hours, the farmer who discovers a case on his farm, he basically has to wipe out his entire flock.
He does, exactly. Well, it's been that way all along. If you find one or two dead birds or sick birds, even if you have a migratory bird in the area, you might have to call, because it's like a fire break trying to stop it from infecting others in the population. But here's the thing. A lot of mammals have been dying of H5N1. and it's called the European version of the virus because it has enough mutations that it's crossed from birds easily to mammals, and it appears to be spreading amongst mammals.
Yeah.
That's the concern.
Right. Because then it can, especially if it gets into, say, pigs, it can
well, there are
mutate into a form.
It isn't just pigs that can infect humans. Small rodents can also infect humans. There was back in 2012, there was an experiment called gain of function research where scientists took H5N1 and ran it through weasels over and over and over again. Infect a weasel, put it amongst other weasels, and then wait until they get infected, and then put it amongst other weasels, wait till they get it. And over the course of 3 generations, I think it became highly communicable amongst weasels. When they reported on it, suddenly everyone got panicked, and a moratorium on gain-of-function research with regards to avian flu was enacted. I don't know that moratorium has ever been lifted.
It was, actually.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was lifted. I did some looking at this because of the gain-of-function research on the SARS-2 virus, and that was revoked or repealed during the first year of the Trump administration.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Ralph Barrick at University of North Carolina was doing a lot of work on this. Just recently, emails came out showing his conversations with Anthony Fauci, the two of them meeting.
Oh, talking about gain of function with Anthony Fauci, who says there's no such thing. Right. We don't use that term.
Right. After the virus began to spread, he summoned Barrick to D.C. to have a discussion, or, to NIAID, wherever their offices are located. So, yeah, Fauci was being disingenuous at best. But, yeah, the work was being done. And, of course, they were funding the work that was going on in Wuhan through Peter Daszak's organization.
Yes, that's right.
So, there's a black and white cat looking in through our window. Sort of. He's walking through the yard. Yeah, that's Louis, the neighbor's cat.
We have no idea what the neighbor's cat's real name is, but we call him Louis.
He's looking for voles, I think.
I hope he does. So, go get him, Louis.
So, yeah, sadly, that kind of research was being done. And if proper protocols are not followed, as appears to be the case at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, then you get a thing that spreads. So,
they've had not circus, but zoo animals have died. Lions, sea lions
in Peru.
All sorts of marmots and weasels.
Illinois reported possums and found
it's in a wide variety of mammals right now.
Right. And when you get animals that are running wild, deer or boar, which has become a real problem here in the United States, and now in Canada, they've got the super pigs that they were breeding wild boar with domestic hogs. So you get a boar that's the size of a hog. Some of those that have gotten loose now, they've taken down are weighing up to 500 pounds. I mean,
and they crossed over here.
And they're crossing in. Yes,
illegal immigrants.
The Canadians are sending in their war pigs.
Yeah, they're Canadian bacon.
Billy Connolly again. I have a wee proposition for you.
I love Billy Connolly.
Well, we need to take a break, but I want to throw something at you that you might be able to at least offer some insight on as regards the biology. Why are global sperm counts continuing to decline among men?
Oh.
Yes, that's ahead on P.I.D. Radio. Prepare for spiritual war by arming yourself with information. Take advantage of these specials through March that dig deep into the Bible to help you make sense of the chaos around us. First, our Veneration Bundle, our 2 co-authored books plus the travelogue DVDs from our Israel tours. An $85 value, just $45 plus shipping and handling. The Second Coming of Saturn Bundle, featuring my book and the 13-part companion DVD, a $50 value for just $35 plus shipping and handling. The This Is War special offer, featuring the Second Coming of Saturn, 4 DVDs, and 7 hours of audio interviews with Bible scholar Dr. Michael Heiser, a $145 value for just $75 plus shipping and handling. And the Gilbert Fiction Collection, all 8 novels in Sharon's Red Wing Saga series plus my 2 novels, a $200 value for just $140 plus shipping and handling. These offers are available through March only at our online store, gilberthouse.org/store. And again, we thank you for your prayers and support. Welcome back to P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and we want to talk to you about Build Barn Better.
Yes, our plan to move our office space out of our spare bedrooms because every single one is taken up with studio or shipping. So we've got a 1,200 square foot pole barn. It's a metal building on a concrete slab.
It's a nice building.
It is a nice building. It's in great shape. It would cost way more for us to build something if we were to try to do this or to buy an existing building. The building is already there. It's a 1,200 square foot rectangle, 30 by 40. We just need to clean it out, which we're in the process of doing. When we come back from Israel, that will get underway.
That'll kick into high gear.
Earnest, yes. But we'll run power. We'll insulate it. It's got power out there. We just need to run it all the way around and run a circuit for the mini split.
Yeah, before you put in the spray foam insulation, you have to. My understanding is you have to run all the electric.
Run conduit.
If you want it, you better do it now, kind of thing.
So we'll do that. Then we'll have it insulated and replace a couple of windows, and then basically we'll set up a couple of areas. One for Unraveling Revelation, another for the 5 and 10 news analysis, video teachings, presentations, whatever. And then we'll just see where the Lord leads from there, because it's a big open space. We'll put our shipping stuff out there, and then whatever, if we decide someday to have Bible studies out there or small get-togethers, we'll have a space where we can do that instead of right now where we're kind of constrained by a bunch of 10 by 12 rooms.
Yeah, they're pretty teeny. Well, for bedrooms, they're not too bad, but
but for office space, for studio space, they're really cramped.
Well, especially when you run out of rooms. If we had another room, we'd fill it up.
Well, we could sleep on couches, convert to master bedroom.
Yeah, there you go. We don't need a bed. Good grief. That's so, last year. But yeah, if you are interested, if the Lord puts it upon your heart to donate $1 or more, then just go to gilberthouse.org/donate. We want to remind everybody we are not a 501c3. We would rather not be tethered to the government doing that, which means that any donation that you are kind enough to give to us cannot be tax deductible. We pay taxes on it.
Right.
And sadly, you don't get to deduct it.
Yeah. But we would rather do that than put ourselves under the potential control of the federal government through the Internal Revenue Service.
Right. If we were in a position like Tom Horn is with Whispering Ponies Ranch, he's required to be a 501c3 if he wants to affiliate with Royal Family Kids, which he does. And so that was why they went in that direction.
Yeah, there are advantages to doing that for the work that they do. And
we're pretty small and we don't have little ponies.
Yes.
Maybe one day snarling dachshunds. Are those therapy animals?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
No, they're more like boot camp sergeants.
Yes, snarling dachshund ranch.
But anyway, if you would help with that, that would be most appreciated. Yep. Remind you, download our app because that's where you can get everything we do.
Absolutely. Well,
absolutely.
This was a story that I've not talked about on 5 and 10 because, it's one of those that it always seems to come up when there's a lot of other things going on. And that's why we enjoy doing PID radio, because we get more time that we can talk about events that, are not.
We're not constrained. We can blather all we want to.
We can. There was an article that came out in November by a team of researchers, international team of researchers. They reviewed almost 3,000 abstracts and 868 full articles and analyzed data from 38 sperm count studies done on 6 continents.
Right.
This was an update of a study that they did back in 2017. Now, in 2017, this group found that sperm counts in North America, Europe, and Australia, so we're talking predominantly the Anglo-Saxon world or European world, had fallen by over 50% in a 50-year span.
That's a lot.
Your sperm count drops by half. That affects the fertility rate. And of course, we've seen during the same period of time, birth rates have been falling, especially in the Northern Hemisphere over the last half century. But it's just amazing. In 1973, according to this update now, there were 101 million sperm per milliliter. That was 1973. On average, the sperm count in 2018 had dropped from 101 million per milliliter to 49 million per milliliter.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. What is going on? According to this, the decline between 1972 and 2000 was at an average rate of 1.16% per year. But since 2000, it's increased to 2.64% per year. The decline in sperm count it's happening at an increasing rate over the last 20 years.
Now, do you want to hear a really odd correlation between sperm count and something else? I just didn't tweet the story because, well, frankly, there are certain stories that have headlines that I just as soon not tweet. But this one, and if you don't follow my Twitter account, you should, because I put all of the news that Derek and I find really interesting. In fact, a lot of the things I put there, Derek actually discusses in his 5 and 10s.
Yeah.
I spend about 3 hours every morning trolling the news and then deciding which ones I think are very important. One of those had to do with lower sperm counts, but also that it seemed to be tied to longer phalluses, longer male parts.
Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, over the last 30 years or so, the average length has increased. If I remember correctly, it was something like 50%.
Okay.
Now, I don't know whether or not the study participants, those who ran the study, were discounting anyone who was on enhancers.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just call them that.
Okay.
Or perhaps other medications, or other medications that might have somehow affected that particular part of their bodies. But I find it interesting that they are saying what is perceived in the media, in films, in just common folklore, that the longer you are,
mm-hmm.
the more potent you are, this symbol of great masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
Look back in antiquity and the statues.
Yeah, like
the rude man in England and men.
The Egyptian fertility god,
who was not men, he was Max.
Yeah.
As our good friend Patty Heron used to say. That this concept or this belief that the greater
mm-hmm.
then the greater the potential. No, that's actually not the way it works.
The other way around.
Inverse proportion, mm-hmm. the longer, the lower. But here's a story that just came out a few days ago. A recent study at Harvard concluded, based on their data, that blue-collar workers
mm-hmm.
have higher sperm counts. Because they're lifting heavy objects at work.
Right. In fact, I saw a story on that, and I was going to bring that up, that there appears to be good research backing up the idea that if men want to improve their fertility, mm-hmm. they should start exercising or doing manual labor. Pick up a shovel and be more potent.
It could be that there is a homeostasis process, an activity requiring a causality or implementing a causality. In other words, when you lift lots and lots of heavy things, that somehow it boosts a hormone in mm-hmm. your body, like testosterone. Because I know that when we exercise, that it increases a lot of hormones within our bodies mm-hmm. and helps with blood flow. One of the reasons for that is because there are little pumps in our feet. And when you actually get up and walk, mm-hmm. it helps with the return to your heart.
Right.
So it helps with venous health. But it's funny when you think about it, the blue-collar workers would be more potent than the professor who's studying the blue-collar workers.
Yeah. That is, as we become more sedentary, that may have a lot to do with the decline.
And that's my point. I think we are becoming very, very sedentary, and men are being exposed to a lot of pseudo hormones within plastics that are being used over and over again, and within the environment. And we're seeing an uptick of gynecomastia. No, I don't know that. Let me look up that word. But it's essentially men developing breasts.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the potential causes that was mentioned by the researchers who said that this decline in
yeah, I'm right. It's gynecomastia.
That sounded right,
yeah.
but that's not my area, so I defer to the gentlewoman from the Ozarks. They
not
dismissed
to the executioner. Defer.
Yes. They dismissed genetic explanations, saying that those take many generations to appear, and this decline and this increasing decline in sperm count is happening over a couple generations.
I bet when you started listening to this, you had no idea that it was going to go in this direction.
No, neither did we, but that's how we roll.
That's how we roll.
They are looking at endocrine disruptors,
yes,
which can be found in many everyday products: plastic bottles, containers, liners of metal food cans, detergents, flame retardants, food toys, ATM receipts.
Oh my goodness, you're kidding. The way they're thermally printed, you mean?
Apparently so. And pesticides. These are, there's a chemical called phthalates, commonly found in personal care products, plastics, and children's toys. One common class of these compounds. And trying to avoid them is a real challenge because manufacturers are not required to disclose them.
It's impossible. The only way you could do it is if you go Amish.
Right. Well, yeah. Yeah. So that combined with the fact that we are more and more sedentary, where we're not actually doing physical labor anymore, is probably those two factors combined. But when you look at the birth rates, the birth rate here in the United States, I think, is 1.8 live births per woman on average. And to maintain population, you need 2.1. I just saw South Korea just hit its lowest mark ever for 2022 is like 0.78. Hong Kong, I know, is also below 0 or below 1, that is. Singapore is below. Basically, the Northern Hemisphere is not having enough children to maintain the population. There are certain areas in the Middle East and in Africa and in South America where you've got certain populations that are having enough children to maintain and grow the population.
And they tend to be more active.
But in the Northern Hemisphere, we're not having enough babies. And this even impacts China, by the way. I just wrote a chapter for a forthcoming book for Defender Publishing. And I took a look at this because it was about China's influence on the American administration. You know, the big guy getting his 10% cut from the company connected to the head of Chinese intelligence. Our friend, Lieutenant Colonel Bob McGinnis, wrote a book called Kings of the East recently. And in a broader sense, it's a really good book, and it's a good title because it's a reference to the kings of the East from the book of Revelation, who come against Israel in the last days. And for a long time, it's been assumed that those kings of the East, even though they're not mentioned in the same chapter as the 200 million man army from Revelation 9. Okay, those are in two separate chapters. But in my head, they'd always been connected because I've always heard them taught that way. It's always been assumed that this 200 million man army, first of all, was human. We disagree. We think they're supernatural.
Yeah, by using the word man, you've just given it away. 200
million, an army of 200 million.
Yes.
Yeah.
200 million something
It's been
strong.
Interpreted as 200 million man army because a lot of end times Bible prophecy tends to look for naturalistic explanations. And that it has to be China because they've got 1.6 billion people. But here, 1.4 billion, excuse me. But the United Nations, which is not really promoting hey, everything is fine with the environment. I mean, the UN is pushing the climate crisis and we all need to give up our sovereignty to the UN so they can tell us how we're supposed to live agenda. They project that China's population will fall to under 800 million by the end of this century. So in the next 75 years, China is going to lose about almost half of its population, which means it's getting older, fewer soldiers. So, and China's military is about 2 million right now. So how do you get to 200 million from 2 million when you've got an aging, shrinking population? You don't. But it does suggest, and this is the relevance for us today, that if they're going to make a move militarily, they're going to do it soon because they see that window of opportunity is closing.
Well, I think so. And I think that window of opportunity may be within the next few years.
Yes.
May even be
Colonel
this
McGinnis
year.
agrees.
Yeah. Well, we love Bob. He's love Bob.
Very insightful. Finding somebody who's got his type of military and intelligence experience who also understands end times Bible prophecy is rare.
Bit of a left turn. That is with regard to warfare in the region, and that includes Russia, China, possibly Taiwan, Japan. There are a lot of areas that Africa, South America, so many areas that are getting involved in what's becoming a world war. One of the things that you require in order to operate within a theater of war are tanks that run on some kind of petroleum product generally. And there is a pipeline that has been disrupted. It's the one that goes through Turkey. It's the BTC pipeline. And
now, is that oil or is that natural gas?
That's natural gas. But, and I realize that that's not a petroleum product necessarily.
Well, it is not one that you might
you might not think of. But the BTC pipeline was...
No, it is crude oil.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you were right. I was wrong. I was thinking it was natural gas.
I thought so too, but that's why I wanted to ask about that. It is crude oil that runs from Turkmenistan to Tbilisi, which is in Georgia. Baku is in Azerbaijan.
Yeah, it is the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline. Ceyhan is, I think, the final port in Turkey. But the problem is that there are portions of that pipeline that have now been damaged because they've gone right through the earthquake region. So that pipeline is, if it ever opened, it's now shut.
Yeah, it is offline. It did go online, by the way, back in 2005.
Speaking of that pipeline, wasn't that a pipeline that emerged during the Dick Cheney, George Bush Jr., George W. Bush era, when there was a push towards bringing Caspian Sea gas and oil down through Afghanistan, I think.
Yeah, it was called the TAPI pipeline, which was supposed to go Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India.
Right.
That was the plan. And they were negotiating with the Taliban to try to get the deal. And they had brought representatives over from the Taliban to the U.S. to negotiate this prior to 9/11. But we did a lot back on that.
We talked about this a lot back in the days, early days on P.I.D. radio.
Yeah.
We wore tinfoil hats most of the time. I still have one that I put on now and then, but I've learned to stop looking for a conspiracy everywhere and to understand that we are part of a spiritual war,
right.
Which itself may seem like a conspiracy, but it's just the fallen realm working with humans. Yeah, I see it.
There's the proposed map. Turkmenistan, because I had to look it up. I in my mind, I not enough geography to know where Turkmenistan was. It's northwest of Afghanistan, north of Iran, and the goal was to run from those gas fields in Turkmenistan through Afghanistan over to Pakistan and India, which obviously have a need for lots and lots of energy. India has just passed China as the world's most populous nation.
India is huge. They are hosting a lot of Western corporations and industry, and much of the chip building has moved from China to India or Taiwan.
Taiwan, yeah.
Well, Taiwan was doing a lot of it, but because of the potential for war, the Western companies are starting to move it out of Taiwan.
Yeah, Japan and the U.S.
And even there was also a center, I think it was one of the centers that was mainly locked down in this second Chinese lockdown that caused Apple products to stop, a whole lot of electronics production that just, how about if we do all this here?
Yeah.
Radical idea.
Yeah.
Make it at home, use it at home.
I wrote about that in another chapter for another book at Defender Publishing. The idea of economic nationalism, which was something the British did very well. I mean, it wasn't very nice to the people on the other end of it. I mean, the East India Company, for example, and the way the Brits abused the American colonists.
They went shopping elsewhere and brought it home.
And they told the people who were making things in those other places, you can only sell to us.
Yes, but there's a big difference between that and having your own people employed in home-located companies.
But it did protect, and the tariffs that they levied on imported things that were brought in from elsewhere protected home industry. And the idea that there should be free trade basically guts your industry when you're dealing with competitors such as China, where workers are not working for industries bound by the same environmental restrictions, regulations, and so forth. And as the Chinese are finding out, as some of their jobs now are going to places like Bangladesh, free trade it can really gut your domestic industry. So and America, and so the British found that out. Britain became a global superpower by this sort of economic nationalism. But when their traders, their men who led the economy, started worrying more about investing in investments rather than actually investing in economic productivity, things that built things for people.
Make widgets.
Yeah. No, instead we're going to invest in foreign currencies and then play the float and then, get rich that way, which is what's happening in the United States today. Investment bankers are investing in these really convoluted, we're going to buy up blocks of mortgages and invest in those instead of investing in shipyards or
life insurance policies.
Life insurance policies.
Yeah, there are so many things that are traded, just like we see in the book of Revelation.
Right. So those guys at the top of the pyramid are making money, but the rest of the economy is being hollowed out in jobs, and the economy is being shipped overseas. So that happened to the UK in the 19th century. It's happened to the United States since about 1972 with the rise of the World Economic Forum, and especially since 2002 when China was admitted to the World Trade Organization.
Did you know that during World War II, if I remember correctly, coal was sold rather than used at home? A lot of domestically mined coal in Great Britain was sold in order to finance the war, which meant that their people at home had to ration coal, even though the UK has tons of coal. Lots and so much coal, but they were mining it. Miners had jobs, but it was being sold. Those who were able to stay, because young, able-bodied men were conscripted to go and fight, just like in World War I.
And they needed to raise currency to pay for planes and tanks and fuel.
They did, and they required farmers to plant crops as ordered. In other words, you didn't get to plant the crop you wanted to plant, which ran into some major problems because Great Britain was thinking, okay, we need more cotton, let's say. And so they would go to a farmer who was actually a dairy farmer, and they would say, sell off your cattle and plow up your fields and plant cotton. It's not something he was used to doing, nor was his land necessarily suited for cotton. You had bankers and governmental associates who were making the decisions for a blue-collar working class that had more kids. No, I'm not going in that direction, sorry. But they were telling them what to do. They were saying, we know better.
Yeah.
And it ended up with really bad yields.
It really was. And that is relevant to today because there was just a study published by an academic from Leeds University arguing for World War II style rationing to save the planet.
To save the planet.
Right.
Well, less food, staying at home, sedentary lives. You don't own anything, but think how happy you will be.
Everybody moving off the land into 15-minute cities where you can walk to everything you need, and if you'll own nothing and be happy.
No.
That's what they want. Go back to what the Brits endured through World War II, and to a lesser extent here in the United States, where you had to give up certain commodities and ration others. You had to use your little coupon ration book to get the things you needed, because the bureaucrats, the technocrats, really, not bureaucrats, technocrats, the engineers who think that they alone are qualified to tell the rest of us how to live for maximum efficiency and utility, they should determine how much we get. This drumbeat is continuing louder and louder with the idea that in fact, this was part of that paper from the guy at Leeds University. We need to allocate resources based on carbon usage. The old idea of carbon credits that Patrick Wood, the author of Technocracy Rising, a book we highly recommend, has been writing about for years. Carbon credits, carbon currency. They will build a new economy based on allocating carbon. How much you heat your home? Okay, so many carbon credits. You drive to work? Okay, that's so many carbon credits. If you've got extra at the end of the month, sorry, no rollover credits.
This will be a digital currency of some kind.
If you're rich, you can buy indulgences. Carbon credits.
Well, it will be a religion, let's face it.
It is.
Well, during World War I, a similar thing happened where the government appropriated / stole entire crop yields from peasants, serfs, they were called in Russia. And this was after they began, by 1921. By 1921, 4 years after the revolution, and at the end of the Civil War that followed the revolution, a lot of people aren't aware that there was a 2-year civil war following that because the Red Russians and the White Russians did not get along.
No.
So it was Lenin's crowd who won, and eventually Stalin who took over from that. But in 1921, so much seed had been demanded from these peasants who grew the seed that essentially fed the army, that there was no seed left over for planting. Suddenly you had famine taking hold east of the Volga River to an extent that was unprecedented.
I am really glad my ancestors got out of that part of the world 30 years before.
Yes, and it lasted for 2 years, this famine. And what a lot of people also don't know, I didn't know it, was that the ARA was an American relief organization led by Hoover.
Herbert Hoover.
Yes, Herbert Hoover, who went over to Russia along with a lot of his companions. They brought food, they brought provisions, they brought clothing, and they came upon people that looked like skeletons and brought them back to life. In other words, the West, 100 years ago, almost to the day, rescued Russia.
And there's no cause for Russians to be starving. They've got way more arable farmland there and in Ukraine than we do in the United States.
So
there's no
much.
reason for it.
They have so much arable farmland, they don't have enough people to farm it. So they rent it out to China.
There was a story a few years ago about descendants of the Boers who settled in South Africa who are trying to get out from underneath the government there, which is just appropriating white farmers' lands. And so people are going hungry there. They approached the Russian government, said, could we just emigrate en masse? Just bring like 15,000 farmers to Russia and I don't know whatever came of that story, but
I'd like to think Russia took them because, again, they are allowing the Chinese to come in and farm a lot of the land that is just north of China. What does that mean? It means China will eventually just take over that land.
Yeah, but both China and Russia are facing a demographic winter with populations that are aging and shrinking, and both countries now are starting. We've heard for years about China's one-child policy. It's now a 3-child policy. Russia has been actively encouraging people to, we'll pay you to go home and have babies.
They get prizes.
Right.
The more kids they have, the more the prizes they get. And you can get a bigger apartment assigned to you if you have a bigger family. This
claim that we are overpopulated and we're going to overrun the carrying capacity of the earth is an anti-human doctrine of demons that is pushed by these anti-human, useful idiots for the principalities and powers who want to destroy humanity because God created earth and told us to take dominion of it. They want it. And they tried to get it back in the day with the hybrids destroyed in the flood. And so now their allies are back again. They're convincing us to do ourselves in.
You recently on 5 and 10 talked about this. You and I just have discussed it at home. George Soros presented to the security conference in Munich, which I think was hilarious because this conference is, like 60 some years old. And it is built upon the idea of promoting peace.
Yeah.
And yet all they do is talk war.
Mm-hmm. He was invited to speak. It's a non-government organization. And yet Vice President Harris went and spoke. I thought her words were really interesting because she's a former prosecutor. So she knows words matter and they are precisely applied for specific legal intent. We have, quoting now, formally determined, end quote, that Russia is guilty of crimes against humanity. Like, really?
Yeah. So there's been a tribunal and evidence was presented? No.
And media totally missed it. Yeah. But Soros was there, and Soros gave this long speech and basically boiling it down to 3 points. Number one, keep fighting Russia to the last Ukrainian. Number two, we're about to destroy the earth, so we need to go on essentially a carbon currency so that we save Mother Gaia. And number three, whatever the cost, don't let Donald Trump back into office. That was essentially the three main points of his long
and
discourse.
He also said that it was the uneducated white people who put him into office.
Yeah. Basically insulted Trump voters, saying he appealed to uneducated whites.
Yeah.
Like, really? Because I don't think you know any of the people that I know. What's really interesting is that there's a study that just came out this past week that shows that people with higher cognitive ability are less likely to be woke and politically correct.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Who did that study? Do you remember?
I'd have to go back and look it up. I'll see if I can find that. The anti-woke study. But yeah, in other words, if you're more intelligent, you're less likely. And we see this in Bill Maher. I don't agree with his politics, but he's an intelligent guy. Mm-hmm. And even he says, hey, you guys who say you're on my side, you're going way too far here.
Oh, I know. Well, the publisher of the Roald Dahl books was going to re-edit them to remove offensive words, adjectives, and phrases.
Yeah.
And there was such pushback from Roald Dahl fans. And those books have been around for generations.
Mm-hmm. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So many good. In fact, he was married to Patricia Neal.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure about that. I'll double check on that as I'm
The Witches, which was turned into a wonderful movie years ago. Again, that's all Roald Dahl stuff, but they're taking out stuff that...
the one downside of The Witches for me is that it seems to elevate white magic.
Promotes a white magic.
Yeah, exactly. It's
entertaining, but do not watch it for any kind of truth about theology or the supernatural realm. But the fact is, he's a beloved children's author, but they've done this to Dr. Seuss too.
Yes. And there was pushback on that.
Mm-hmm.
How dare you, ruin our... Pretty soon they're going to be going after, J.R.R. Tolkien.
Uh-huh.
They've gone after Shakespeare. Yeah. Well, that's true. They have, haven't they?
Yeah. And we see it manifest in the really awful Amazon Prime series based loosely on Tolkien's work.
Mm-hmm. I was right. He was married to Patricia Neal. They were divorced they were married for 30 years. They were divorced in 1983, and then he married Felicity Crossland. I thought I had remembered this. First time I ever heard of Roald Dahl when I was looking up something that Patricia Neal had done.
But another author who was critical of this said that they're not just doing sensitivity reading and editing. They're actually injecting new sentences to change things. They're injecting ideas. Mm-hmm. And he said, look, if you're an author and you aspire to have your work survive beyond your death, work that will be read for generations like Tolkien or Roald Dahl, you might want to rethink your career, because if this is allowed, future generations will never read your actual words. They're going to read the words that have been rewritten by sensitivity consultants.
That's where a print book is so valuable.
Yes.
In fact, the original versions of Roald Dahl's books were selling on eBay for like £1,500.
That is a really good point, because digital editions, if you buy from some of these digital publishers, and we say this having published our own works through Amazon,
it's a good way to reach the world.
Right. But the fact is that those editions can be stealth edited. Mm-hmm. You may have it, and they release an updated version that suddenly stealth edits things in the book.
Yeah, well.
Won't happen to us.
No. By the way, if you're sitting there going, why did she even bring up Patricia Neal? Who is this woman, Patricia Neal? Because she died a long time ago. She was the one in The Day the Earth Stands Still.
Oh.
Who was sort of the love interest for Klaatu.
Well, I'd forgotten that.
Mm-hmm.
Klaatu, Barada,
Nikto. She had to say it to Gort over and over again so he wouldn't kill her.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, we are headed for an interesting next few years, and that includes the rise of algorithms like Sydney that we talked about last week. Mm-hmm. There are more and more places that are implementing Bing's new AI assistant in searches, and there are some who claim Google will become redundant soon because Sydney will take over.
Google's freaking out about this, so they're trying to get their own version out there, and both of them, Google, I mean, they put it out there and it was giving wrong answers, and Google lost like a huge,
big chunk,
hundreds of millions of dollars off its market capitalization.
I think it was more than $1 billion.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money lost.
Whoops.
Yeah, well, you know how the market works. You see that it crashes, then you go in and buy up a bunch.
Right.
Because it's cheap.
What's interesting is that the founder of Gab, which is an alternative social media platform similar to Twitter.
I have an account, but I never go there.
Yeah, I use mine fairly frequently. Andrew Torba, who's the founder of it, who's a professing Christian, announced that they were going to try to develop a version based on the open AI algorithm, but with a more Christian worldview. And suddenly all the woke mob just went berserk. Oh, it's gonna radicalize the look. It's already radicalized.
Yes.
They found that when you start talking to these things, like we discussed last week, the guy I want to, blow things up. I want to release a deadly virus. I want to get people so angry at one another they start killing each other. Of course, that's not what I really want. That's just, if I were evil. Yeah.
I would like to close this Gab session. We're going to do it there. With a television show that's on Apple TV that Derek and I have been watching. We finally watched the last, because we were trying to sort of drag it out so we wouldn't be disappointed. So one program a night, one episode a night. There were 8 episodes. 9. No, 9. That's right. Season 2 of 10.
Right.
9 episodes, and it's called Severance.
This show, I just seen some buzz about it online. Apple TV has not achieved the size of some of the other streaming services like Hulu or Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever. And you can get Apple TV on Roku or Amazon Prime, which I think was a smart move for Apple if they just tried to limit it to their own Apple TV devices. They're just way too expensive.
Right.
When you can buy a Roku stick for $30. Anyway, the series it's got language.
It does.
So you want to be aware of that.
And it has flashing lights. Every episode warns you, flashing lights.
Maybe, yes, depiction of flashing lights. Oh, okay.
There's only one episode that had them.
Mm-hmm. It is based on a company that has a floor of workers who are severed, and that's a term applied to those who've had a chip implanted in their brains that suppress their memories based on which side of a doorway they're on, basically. They go up an elevator as they get to the office, and suddenly they forget everything about their outside life. Everything that happened outside the office is totally forgotten.
Yeah, it's like there's a cognitive portal between the outside world where their outies live and this severed floor where their innies live.
Yeah.
It splits people into 2 halves, and either half, because of the way it works, they live their entire lives in that half world.
Right. So imagine you wake up in the morning, you go into the office, you put on your badge and you get in the elevator, and then as far as you're concerned, nothing happens again until you're getting off the elevator. It's like the elevator doors close and then they open again, and you're at the end of your day.
Right.
Now, for a lot of us, that'd be great because it feels like you're never working. But for the people you are when you're inside the building, the only existence they know is that the elevator doors open, they come out, they go into their office, they do their drudge 8-hour job, and we won't share any of the plot points or anything. But, they get in the elevator to go home, and then the elevator doors open again and they're back at the office. So they are always at the office.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of other high weirdness that slowly rolls out over the first 9 episodes.
Don't spoil on that because it starts slowly. Our good friend Brian Goodell has started watching it, and we're going to have to say, Brian, you need to go back and watch again because he gave up after the first episode. He didn't think it was developing, but it's like Lost. Mm-hmm. It took a while for Lost to really kick in. But what I think, and you and I have both talked about this, in many ways, this is a modern retelling of The Prisoner.
And that's high praise because The Prisoner was one of those television series that really was like at the pinnacle of excellent storytelling with also a social message. It was really that in the modern world, we live in a panopticon.
Yeah, and you don't understand
we're constantly under surveillance.
Which is what happens at the severed floor, but you find out that it goes beyond that. So, we highly recommend Severance, and we don't want to spoil it anymore for you because, and give it, at least watch 3 episodes before you give up on it.
Yeah, because it takes a little while for you to realize just how well the creators and the writers built the world to create this really immersive story.
Yeah.
I mean, bad storytelling you can spot when there are things that are just really inconsistent. For example, years ago, we started watching that series Jericho, which is about a small town somewhere in Kansas or whatever, Nebraska, where off in the distance, they see a nuclear warhead go off, thinking, oh my goodness, there goes Denver or Colorado Springs or whatever. And they're cut off from the world. They don't know what's going on. And so, okay, well, that's an interesting premise. But as you go on further, it's like, wait a minute. If they've been cut off and utilities are cut, why do they still have gasoline for their vehicles?
Right.
And if this is supposed to be in the springtime, why are there mature corn stalks out there in the fields? That shouldn't be until September. Things like that were just inconsistent. You don't see any of those inconsistencies in Severance.
Oh, I know. It's so good. So we highly recommend that. Yeah. Want to remind you again, our app, if you have not downloaded it yet, please do so. And right after Derek and I finish this recording, we're going to just sort of do an intro and an outro for Mike Heiser. Cannot be, there's just no other Mike Heiser. There simply is not. He was one of a kind, and he was a gift to Christianity, gift to the body, because he loved apologetics. He loved taking very deep, complicated concepts that academics study and boiling them down to language that you and I can understand.
So that will be our special for today. That will also be available on our app and our, if you subscribe to this podcast through a podcatcher, you'll find it there as well. But those will be both out by this afternoon, Saturday, February 25th.
2 P.I.D. radios today.
Absolutely. Ooh. Well, until next time, we thank you for listening. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
P.I.D. Radio is an outreach of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, PIDradio.com, Twitter @PIDradio, or by downloading our free app, PIDradio.com/app or GilbertHouse.org/app. Join us each week for our Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship.